Just days after winning the presidential election, Florida resident Donald Trump is announcing his choices for his new administration. He's the first Sunshine State resident to win the White House, and since then, he's elevated a growing number of his home state allies to some of the top posts in his new government. His chief of staff, the first woman to hold that job, Susie Wiles, was born in Lake City and spent much of her career as a lobbyist or political operative in Jacksonville and Tallahassee. Mike Waltz, a North Florida congressman and Army veteran, has been named as Trump's national security advisor. U.S. Senator Marco Rubio, a Miami native and the son of Cuban immigrants, is likely to be named Secretary of State. U.S. Senator Rick Scott tried but failed this week to win the powerful position of Senate Majority Leader. He had the backing of big names in the MAGA movement, but he lost out to John Thune of North Dakota in a secret vote of Republican senators. And for perhaps the most important job in the administration, Trump has selected Congressman Matt Gaetz from the Western Panhandle as his new Attorney General. Gaetz has little experience practicing law. After graduating from law school in 2007, Gaetz was admitted to the Florida bar in 2008 and worked for the law firm Keefe, Ankers, and Gordon in Fort Walton Beach. Just 2 years later, he ran for State House and won. He successfully ran for the U.S. House in 2016. Gaetz resigned from Congress this week, meaning that the House Ethics Committee's ongoing probe into allegations against Gaetz for child sex trafficking ends, and no report is likely to be issued. And according to the House Ethics Committee, Gaetz was being investigated for sexual misconduct and/or illicit drug use, sharing inappropriate images or videos on the House floor, misusing state ID records, converting campaign funds to personal use, and/or accepting a bribe, gratuity, or gift in violation of House rules, laws, or standards of conduct. And Ray and Michael, I'd like to ask you, first of all, the mechanics of this. I mean, I think a lot of people are interested in this final report. We don't know what it is. The House Ethics Committee canceled the meeting on Friday to possibly discuss releasing the report. What are the mechanics of releasing it? How likely is it that somebody will be able to get this report released?
Well, the initial stage is through the Ethics Committee, and they were supposed to meet this morning, Friday morning, and for some reason the meeting was canceled, so I'm not sure what's happening there. But I know the information in the report I'm pretty sure will be generally known. Whether it will be published or not, I'm not sure. But I think the Matt Gaetz's background is very well known, of course, in Congress, and he's probably one of the least respected congressmen in the House.
Michael, you covered Gaetz in the House. I mean, is that true? That Gaetz was one of the least respected members up there?
It's kind of complicated because he's not easy to characterize. He does have a reputation for being kind of radical on a lot of issues, and his personal foibles are well known. But he is a skilled debater. I remember when he would be given bills right before they would be debated on the floor. He had never seen it before, and he would be brilliant on the floor, and Democrats would just be wowed by the guy. Mm-hmm. So he is a sharp legal mind, and he's a very skilled politician. He was one of the key loyalists for Trump, and that's why he's in the position that he's in right now.
Barbara, should the report be released?
No, I don't think so. I think that Trump should get his administration just like Biden did. That he won overwhelming, Trump did, by a complete mandate, crossing the aisle, across the country, unseen before, popular vote, of course, we know that, and now he wants to put in his loyalists, and he wants to put in his administration, his cabinet, and I think people are tired of all this bickering, everybody. I think we just saw that in the election. Everyone wants to come together in America, and it's time for us to turn the page and quit this witch hunting. I have here an article where Matt Gaetz, the Department of Justice, dropped their investigation because they didn't have the evidence, and this was in 2023. So now it just keeps going, and I feel that Trump had got the mandate from the American people, and He needs to be able to put in his administration.
Richie, is it in the public interest to have this report released?
Absolutely. I mean, I understand where Barbara's coming from, but the truth is that Democrats and Republicans are going to argue over whether or not to appoint people. They're going to argue over whether or not someone's qualified for the job. It's the same thing that happened to President Obama when Merrick Garland wasn't appointed. Actually, I'd say that was much more egregious. So yeah, we need to hear the information. And really what I'd say to this is that the appointment of Matt Gaetz is not a surprise at all. Look, Donald Trump is a person who has been on the record praising Jeffrey Epstein. He's a convicted sexual abuser, and he appointed someone who is an alleged sexual abuser. So this is exactly what you would expect from these kind of people that we put in power here. And so I don't think anybody should be surprised by the choice.
Ray, I want to ask you this question about mandate. I mean, you and I have lived through many elections, 1972, 1980, 1984. I mean, this was not an historic triumph by
No, it wasn't.
Donald
I think
Trump.
There's been a lot of misinformation about that. I mean, if it's a mandate, it's a very light one. I mean, the country split basically 51-49 if you believe the figures, and this is not like 1972. It's not like 1936, when Alf Landon won one state. It's not like McGovern. So, it's
Or the Jimmy Carter loss in 1980.
yeah. I mean, this is the country is deeply split. There's no real mandate. A few 100,000 votes in the swing states gave the election to Trump, but nearly half the House is Democratic, nearly half the Senate is Democratic. It's not an imbalance as it was after the '64 election, for example, when LBJ controlled everything. And I think the advise and consent part of the congressional authority over appointments is important to keep. I mean, if we want an end to bickering, you don't appoint someone like Matt Gaetz. I mean, Michelle Goldberg of the Times yesterday said it's like when the Roman Emperor Caligula appointed his horse, a consul. Matt Gaetz is Donald Trump's horse in a sense.
Barbara, one of the allegations is that Matt Gaetz sex trafficked or engaged in inappropriate sexual activity with a 17-year-old. Should the Attorney General be under that cloud? Shouldn't that be dissipated? And shouldn't we get to the bottom of that before he's appointed to be the top law enforcement officer?
It would be great for him to be the Attorney General, because those are the same department that continues to come after him even when the charges were not pursued.
Well, what do you make of these charges?
Innocent until proven guilty in the United States.
Absolutely. Shouldn't all the evidence
Innocent
be put
until
out?
Proven guilty.
Right. Shouldn't the evidence be put
There's
out?
not enough evidence to prosecute.
Okay. We don't know what the evidence is, though, because the report
They're
right now
not
is still secret.
prosecuting.
Yeah. Okay. Michael.
And I do want to go back to what was just said. I mean, I printed off the percentages. We're 2%. It's 48% to 50%. So it was 2%, and we have the House, we have the Senate, and so and I'm talking about the Republicans won the House and the Senate through all kinds of people voting.
Yeah. Michael, I want to ask you about Marco Rubio being appointed as Secretary of State. And now we've got Matt Gaetz and Mike Waltz, a congressman from the East Coast, possibly being admitted to the administration. So that leaves 3 seats open. And the governor's called for a special election in the case of the 2 House seats, the Gaetz seat and the Waltz seat. Those elections are going to come up pretty quickly because the governor wants them to happen quickly.
Yeah, because there's still that narrow margin in the chambers, so that if Trump does want a very ambitious agenda to kick off, he doesn't want the close margins. He wants as big of a margin as he can get. So DeSantis, the wheels are already in motion to get that going, to get those special elections going. So for a lot of people who have observed Florida politics for a while, especially with DeSantis as governor, it is interesting because he dragged his feet when Elsie Hastings left the Congress. And
that special election did not happen right away.
It didn't happen for months. And it actually, I think a lawsuit was filed to get it going, to compel the governor to order the special election, because the more that seat was open, which was a strong Democratic seat, the more advantages the Republicans would have. So here we are in an opposite situation, and he's just going to make the machinery go a lot faster than he did before.
I think a lot of people are wondering who is going to be replacing Marco Rubio. And Richie, one of the ideas that came up this week is that Senator Rick Scott said that Ron DeSantis should appoint Laura Trump, President Trump's daughter-in-law, to be the new U.S. Senator from Florida. What do you make of that?
Yeah, that's not a surprise. I think one of the things you've seen go on in Florida politics recently is sort of a battle between DeSantis and Donald Trump. And I think a lot of people who have been in the Trump camp across the state are pushing for Laura Trump. And I think that the speculation is people on the DeSantis side, DeSantis himself, are more interested in having one of his loyalists in the job, keeping it open for himself possibly. This is just a continuation of the battle we've had. I don't know much about Laura Trump. I seriously doubt she's qualified for the job, but we're in a place politically right now where qualifications don't matter so much when you have an R next to your name, and so we'll just have to see how that battle plays out.
And Barbara, there is some tension between Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis. Should Ron DeSantis appoint himself? Would that be a good idea?
I think it's a possibility, but I think Laura Trump has proven herself through the turnaround of the Republican National Committee. So we've had a lot of problems with the Republican National Committee over the last few years. There's been a huge, once again, it's another organization had been infiltrated by lobbyists and had seats by the lobbyists. And Laura Trump, we won. They came in, they changed so much so quickly. They had very little time, and put together a machine, and it worked.
Go ahead.
I mean, if I could just say something to that real quick.
Did the Republicans win?
Yes, they won the election. I'm not an election denier, so I can easily say that.
No,
but
I know that.
The truth is that you mentioned that not bought by lobbyists and whatnot. Trump's appointing his chief of staff, a former lobbyist for a tobacco company and a radioactive waste company, to be one of the head people in charge of the White House. Mike Waltz, the national security advisor, I believe he's appointing. The only thing that I know about him was that he advocated for continuing the Afghanistan war while he was previously a manager and a founder of a defense contractor that made nearly $1 billion off of contracts in the Afghanistan war. This is not some organization that's above the fray. These people are lobbyists, they're swamp creatures, just like Donald Trump says he's going to avoid.
Mm-hmm.
Barbara, swamp creatures, what would you say back?
Swamp creatures.
Yeah.
I would just say that so many of the donors, the money that run both parties, and including St. Petersburg, is a lot of lobbyists. And they're putting forth their own interests, there's no question about that, but they also represent big factions that the politicians, they need those factions to get behind them.
Yeah. Well, Ray, final word.
I'd just like to say that Laura Trump has, maybe in an organizational sense, has turned that around, but at an incredible expense. I mean, the Republican Party, as we knew it, was when I was growing up, my family was Republican, is unrecognizable today. I would say the Republican Party really is really in name only. It's a Trump cult. It's not the Republican Party,
All right.
and the daughter-in-law is part of that.